board meeting was that University Park, people had called, and so University Park Police went out there 3 times. They let them go through everything. Also, the Will County Sheriff's Department's been out there. They've inspected the animal, whatever the department is. They've been out there, inspected, and found that everything is correct, was fine.
Yes, and just to follow up on that, Animal Control, I believe, was the other organization that went out there with Will County. In this situation, and the village manager is not here to speak on this. However, in this situation, it's my understanding that when they were called that this area was in Village University Park, so they responded. It wasn't until after the fact that a question arose as to whether or not it actually was in the village.
Okay, well, I do have some ideas that I would like to share with the board. When you do go to look at the ordinances that we currently have and looking at licensing and increasing your revenues from licenses, I believe that the licensing fees for dogs and cats should probably stay where they are. I think that you might be able to increase your revenue if you properly license everyone who has a pet. I believe there are a lot of people who may not even have licenses for their pets. And I don't know how the village enforces that, but I think that that might be a better idea than raising
We used to have an animal control. Remember, we had an officer that did that, and she knew every dog, my dog, everybody's dog in the village. And that was an unfortunate thing that that was a fund that we lost, the grant. But I don't know how to address that. She's not here, and I can't.
Yes, and I know the police do not enforce. They have never asked me for my dog's license. I walk my dog every day.
Mm-hmm.
They just
Mine
drive right by me. I have a license,
Right.
but I've never been asked for it.
Madam Mayor, just as from experience, usually, especially with an officer, we're not going to bug anybody walking their dog, but say if it's a disturbance of a dog in the backyard, woof, 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 all night long, you as an officer, first question when it's 2 in the morning, you're going to ask that owner of that home, do you have your license for that pet? And that's the main reason for that. And 9 times out of 10, whenever I went to a call and it was that situation, they don't have it. Or if you get a call, 10, 11, dog fighting. Get to a dog fight, pull up, kids out there with dogs, look around that neck. If there's no tag or no license, then that's usually when the police officer is the writing tickets and the revenue comes in. But usually an officer, usually the officer's not going to do anything unless it's a disturbance or.
I understand, and that is so sad. I would like to see officers simply, maybe once a year, go door to door and ask for the residents to produce a license.
And carry.
It's a lot of work.
But
I know it's a lot of work, and I know the shape that the village is in.
Right.
But as a dog owner and a person who has a license renewed every year,
Right.
a person who picks up poop,
Right.
big German Shepherd poop, with a bag,
Too much information.
and it's way too much information as I'm walking my dog to see all the poop that doesn't get picked up.
Right.
So, to me, it's important. To other owners who are diligent and courteous, it's important.
And that is an issue, and I could, well, first of all, I could start by asking the collector and getting a list of how many has registered, like my dog, and making sure they have, because it is an important issue. We've had a lot of complaints about dogs getting from underneath and attacking the postman. He's no longer there anymore. but and she can't control them. And we need to know, did they have a license? Because you do, when you do that, you do have to have them at the animal hospital, you do have to get their shots on. And it's
Yes.
good to see that, so it's not harmful. But we can get a list from her just to see how many. And then if you just happen to see a lot of them around, maybe ask the question, maybe you can be that person for the village too. Some of us can just identify them and say, do you have a license with
Oh,
us?
I'm gonna be the licensed police.
Yes, help us out. You can, the village can volunteer.
Well, yes.
The village.
Thank you for authorizing me to be the licensed police, because I certainly will.
All right, thank you, Gary. Miss
Yes,
Boykins,
yes.
start with the vet. Most people get their dog shots, and they'll give you the list at University Park, and we can easily go from there. Whoever doesn't have a license, who has a, yeah.
That's a good
And
idea.
let's start with the one right there, and even, because I take my dog back and forth here on Western,
I'll
he has
do
a
it
shot
too.
there to the hospital, and go to PetSmart,
Yes,
because
I
some of them take them over there too.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But you know what, if I do go to the vet, is that information that they can give
Well, you
me?
know what, that is something now with the HIPAA Act,
Yeah.
they are impeding on animals too. But you can say how, maybe they can ask you, maybe you can ask them how many dogs are in our village, or how many animals, pets do we have in University Park.
Or maybe
Not if they got their
maybe it
shots
would
or
be more
anything.
powerful coming from an official.
Okay, then we can write them a letter, and I can do that for you.
Yeah.
And get back with you.
All right.
Thank you, Derek. All right, thank you. Okay, next item. Oh, I'm sorry.
I do have one question, Mayor. We have a lot of animal dogs. You know, we have Bronson, but
Go to the mic?
yes. We have a lot of dog owners in Rosedale, and
Oh.
there are a couple of neighbors that let their dogs out and roam. And unfortunately, the poop that's in my yard that I know is not Bronson's, I know where it's coming from. So how can we police that? Or the ones that do walk their dog and let their dog pee and poop in your yard, where you're
Right.
looking at them out the window,
Right.
and they just walking on by their business? What can we
Yeah,
do
I
about
heard about the one over by your area, because the one lady was very afraid, and the dog was just wandering, and he's a big one, bigger than ours. So if you can report, if you know of it, and give us a call, and we can look into it and have an officer to check and see.
Yeah, Mayor, just so he knows, we, I think, double the penalties for
Yeah.
just that. And just as a suggestion, maybe we need to have a pet committee the village has, and, Ms. Boykins can be the
Chair.
chairperson.
I'll be happy to join that too.
And that's right, you can have different subdivisions, with representatives, so that, they could, at least talk to the neighbors and let them know if they don't want to comply, then you would then report it to the police department and let them go ahead and give them a fine.
Have no problem doing that.
And that's
So-
great, because we're talking about our committees tonight, that's something we have to add. Okay, thank you so much, I appreciate that, it's very important. Might be minor to some people, but it's very important. Thank you. Okay, next item is discussion of demolition and increased fees. Sir? Oh, do you want to move this to the board? Now, listen. If he doesn't have all that. Right. Okay, all right, we'll talk about that later. Okay, no move on this one. This is gonna be a great discussion, because we have to complete that. Discussion demolition increased fees, including traffic control by police department. Okay, yes, please.
I had one question.
Go ahead.
Certainly.
Oh, but it's not part of the traffic or what we have in front of us, but what is the definition of structure? Or in particular, when we're talking about demolition of structures, we're not talking about tool sheds or, I don't know, little sheds that you get from Home Depot. We're talking about the houses and things like that. Big structures, not any kind of.
Correct, and I think the village does not, I didn't bring the entire code with me, but this village does not differentiate between residential maybe and commercial. Some places do. They just have one fee for a structure, not necessarily taking down your shed in the backyard.
I was thinking it's not, again, not part of the ordinance, but we should also define structure, or it's part of this ordinance. It's not, I don't remember seeing it when I read it, but this is what we're here.
Okay. And I'll double check that to see if there is already a definition or not.
Yeah. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I understand the structured portion of it, but the question that popped up in my mind was that the fees that the person would have to pay, particularly if those resources were needed, you know, like the police and fire, whatever. And so just, you know, if there was a large tree, for example, that required those resources, that would not be covered under this because we're just defining structure.
Right.
But what if there was a, you know, big tree that was private, you know, not what has been going on here lately, but if someone has a large tree that has to, you know, when they drop the tree, it's got to block traffic, maybe because they got to drop it in the street, or they have to, you know, block off the street, it requires police assistance and that kind of thing. How is something like that?
Well, would you
dealt with?
actually call that demolition or just removal?
No, in this ordinance, the permit fee for the application fee for getting a permit to demolish or move a structure does not apply to the scenario that you're discussing about a tree. That would be, I guess, we could look into that to propose something along the same sort of lines for tree removal, but this is just for permits to demolish a structure.
Because I've noticed in the village, there's one in Circle Drive, and there's another area, a house is totally demolished. In Sandra, yeah, they took it down to the ground. So I don't know what the results of that, I'm still trying to find out. So, yeah. So what do you feel on this, attorney? Do you want, if you think it's a great difference from the scenario that trustee Milton Payne said, or you want to?
Yes, because this ordinance, the permit fee is within the larger ordinance, but this ordinance applies to actual demolition,
Okay.
relocation of structures.
Okay, and that's one from 50.
But we will look into proposing certainly an ordinance concerning costs incurred by the village for police or other emergency services for when you're removing a large tree or situations
Okay.
in that nature.
So will we move this to final?
We can't take final action,
Can't.
make motions on final action.
Is there a motion to take this to the final action?
No, we
Cannot
can't,
say cannot? Cannot?
correct, we can't
Okay.
take final action today.
All right.
There's no objection.
Consensus.
Yes, that's what I mean. Is there a consensus to move this to agenda?
With the section, the definition of structure.
Okay.
And the ordinance to match.
And an ordinance for tree removal would be an entirely separate ordinance. So I think we can look into that and put that on committee of the whole.
Okay, so that will go on for our whole, the meeting of the whole. And please, everyone, when we go on, when we move it, when we agree to put it on, go to the whole, that means that any questions, concerns, get it out now, so we can just go by. We'll have to debate or table. Is there anything right now, other than the suggestions that trustee Oscar Brown and trustee Wilson and trustee Milton Payne had, if there are any other, so we can move this? Okay, hearing none, it goes to final. All right, the next discussion is fire department sections, updates and amendments. Okay, this one, first. This one is unbelievable tight. The next slide,
Lieutenant, Lieutenant, if you could just
talk about this.
chat on that.
Basically, what we're looking at here is we were tasked by Chief Payne, myself, and Deputy Chief Childers to look at our ordinance and see how it pertains to us and how it currently pertains to us. Problem we first ran into is a lot of the verbiage was from the 1970s and 1980s, which obviously doesn't reflect anything for today. So what we did is, in a way,
1970s and 80s.
70s and 80s. And what we did was, first off, we went and we tried to figure out a way that we can standardize our ordinances that reflect state statutes. State statutes is an industry standard that's across the board, that's followed by all the fire departments. That's a good baseline for us to start with. And when we did that, that's what we started our foundation with. And when you look at the recommendations that we've given you guys for review on this ordinance, two of the biggest things that we looked at were the definition of the fire chief and the deputy chief, the requirements, the rights that's based on through the state statutes, and then to make both those ranks equal in requirements. So both people, whether one's out or not there, the other one's equally qualified to make the decisions. So that was a key thing that we wanted to do with those two coinciding, gave us an extra layer of comfort, took the liability off of one person not being as qualified as the other. The second thing is in the old ordinance, we were never defined. Our ranks were never defined. It was just generally reflected basically the fire chief and his duties, and never really drilled down and defined each rank. If you'll see on the first section, 3 and 4, it not only, 1 is the fire chief, 2 is the deputy chief, 3 is the lieutenants, and 4 is the firefighters. Those were never defined before in any of our ordinances. So what we did as a whole is we wanted this ordinance to reflect us today, how we operate, and how we're defined. And that was pretty much our goal. This whole update and ordinance will be in multi-stages. This is just the first one to just define us as a department.
What page are you on?
The very first one, you'll see in the front.
Section 232.
Oh, correct. And you guys were given 3 copies, the original.
The second copy may be the easiest. If you flip through it, they have stricken out and underlined. That's probably the easiest one to follow along with.
Yeah, and you'll see in there in the first one, a lot of the references are directly to the state statutes, and those are actually stated in the ordinance. So there'll be no questions.
How old is this ordinance?
It
That'd be 232 Division of Fire.
No, I'm saying, how old is this ordinance?
looks like the last update was in 2005.
2005.
2005, correct. And a lot of the verbiage, when those updates throughout the years were very specific, we're looking at getting rid of all of the 1970s, the 1980s, and then updating even the 05 to our current operation today.
Okay. Now, yeah, I see, ordinance 1974. Then 1905, you're right, okay.
And what we also tried to do is define our department. It never was defined before. It was just a general, hey, fire chief, the concept. You have it.
And the organizational charts.
And then take the liability off the village, we want to go by state statute. That is a good foundation for us to start with, and we can move forward off of that.
Mayor, I just have just one quick question on paragraph 3, and maybe it's a.
Such other additional employees.
Well, this is under 232-01, the creation and composition, where it says lieutenant paramedic personnel. The last 2 lines of that paragraph, it says, and who shall report to and work under the general supervision and direction of the deputy chief. And my only concern was that if there ever came a time where the chief gave somebody an order, but somebody could come back and say, well, my responsibilities are to the deputy chief. So I didn't know if we should add chief as,
Slash deputy chief.
deputy chief,
And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how the structure works, the fire chief would be the administrative portion. The deputy chief would handle the day-to-day operations, which would be the direct management of the lieutenants. And that's probably why that's reflected that way.
Yeah.
But putting chief in it would be a simple way to cover it and then isolate it immediately.
Okay.
So our goal here is just to start defining ourselves, to just start getting us up to date, give us a baseline of industry standard.
I'm definitely for the structure, because I keep saying structure. Because I was just talking to the chief, and we need to do an organizational chart and know who's where, what they do in their functionality. So this is the first start of it. This would be, notice that we do have 2 different ones in this spreadsheet. I was showing the amendments and the changes. So we wouldn't do anything but a first reading on this. If we could take this to the village meeting of the whole. So is everyone in agreement, and you can take this, review it,
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wasn't sure how we were going to go through this, either by section or just with the whole thing. I do have some recommendations
Sure.
and changes that I'd like to see. In 23-2-01, I believe it's somewhere in between paragraphs 1 and 2 would probably be a good place, but should allow for the deputy chief to serve in the absence of the fire chief. I didn't see that as part of any part of paragraphs 1 and 2. We should also allow for the selection of outside people for the deputy chief's position. However, there ought to be some sort of preference in regards to internal candidates. I think that ought to be defined in paragraph 2. And in my opinion, we should leave it open for multiple deputy chiefs, or create a command structure similar to what you would find in the police department under the police chief. In that case, it's a police chief, deputy chief, commander structure. I think that would work pretty well, and you should put that somewhere in these paragraphs 3 and 4, or in section 23-2-03.
Right. And they did, though, they changed that, said duties of the chief, or they crossed out chief, they said duties of the division of fire personnel. So you're saying what?
Create more of a command structure. The similarity that I was looking at, there's a police chief, deputy chief, commander structure.
Right.
And that is clearly defined the chain of command in the police department. I think it ought to be something similar for the fire department. However, your description of your people work, but with that specific command structure, say fire chief, deputy chief, commander 1, commander 2, who's a commander.
As it steps down.
No, but as it steps down. So I think that needs to be defined a little more. I think if you look at that section and with the police department, I'm not sure the exact section, but if you look there and it talks about commanders, you see a good example there.
We do have a command structure which we can get to all you guys. It already is defined. As far as your issue with the DC being in charge in the absence of the fire chief, if you look in section 232-03, which would be the second
Yeah, that's
page,
what I was just looking at.
it'll be that bottom half. We did
Right.
define that. In the absence of the fire chief, a qualified,
Yeah,
equally qualified
it's there.
person will operate.
It's addressing what you said to, Trustee Oscar Brown.
I think on
Right
that first
here.
section it does. Yeah.
Right. The first section is, like I said, the other ones were already scratched out. We did define that and identify that in 232-03.
Second paragraph.
Right, the second paragraph, that's underlined. They're under the first one is scratched out, and then he redefines it in the second one.
And I believe the multiple DCs, the only reason why that was changed is we currently don't have
So
that.
that's there.
So it doesn't reflect us today. That was the only reason why that was in. That was an older concept that we had, which can actually absolutely be put back in.
Next thing, you need to update to the new annotations standing in 2302-03, doing Illinois revised statutes, that Illinois compiled statutes. There's a conversion table for that. Councilman,
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I think that might be it for me.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
let me just make a comment. Most of this I'm looking at, first of all, you leave for commissioner training. Fire department has actually 2 modules on their own. One thing I learned is that usually what I'm looking at is pretty much the same thing that the state, and Lieutenant, if you can, just correct me at any time, but if I'm mostly correct, and this is from my reflection of back being on the commission, most of the laws that are set and that I see that they put here are already written by the state statute. So what I see here is that the fire department pretty much just updated everything that should have been in our ordinances. As far as the structure, it's already written, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably already written according to the state law. And right now, pretty much with any rank, I mean, although, Trustee Oscar Brown wants to put it in there, I mean, I don't have no problem with it, but what I'm looking at, Mayor, is pretty much with everything that I remember seeing, especially with the promotion of the lieutenant's exam. With the lieutenants, I just seen it as I flipped through, but the police and fire commission, I seen they even had that in there. And that might be on 23. section 232.01, paragraph 3. And I see they even have the Promotion Act in there. So a lot of it, too, it looks like they took a lot of everything that was in the state statute and did us a favor and help update our ordinances.
And that's what's nice about the fire service. A lot of our stuff is not up for discretion. All the state statute, it's all broken down. We don't have much room to move. Everything's already set up for us.
Right.
I do have one question. So I'm looking at the section 23205, fire protection and ambulance services outside village limits.
Right.
Now, we crossed that out and we're not authorized, insured, or empowered to respond beyond the corporate limits. 232-05, fire protection and ambulance services outside village limits. So is there any way we can update or get them, or do you guys already have a map to say what's outside of city limits? Because we really don't know about the dogs, right? Is that unincorporated? Is that within? So does the fire department know?
No, that's a great question, and we do have it addressed. Is when we leave our town, we operate under mutual aid box alarm agreements that are already established between other towns. So basically, when we go to another town, we can operate with their consent, and we can operate and bill under our own ordinances. We don't have to go by them. So we have an agreement, say, hey, University Park is coming over to Richard Park to help us out. What you guys do in your own village is you can apply to here, provide the service, and then move on. So we have established agreements throughout. And if we go even larger, like when we had gone down to New Orleans, we're covered under a box alarm and made this agreement that's basically nationwide.
Oh.
So those are all defined, correct, yeah. We did that, and also, I'll be real honest, I understood why it was here, but just when it was the old way, it didn't really define and reflect something as large as a Mavis division response.
Mayor. First, I would just like to commend you and Chief Chelios for the excellent job that you did.
Thank you.
But I'd like to follow up here on, just to make sure that everybody would be working is properly covered in all situations. I understand the mutual aid agreements and so forth. And in Chief Chelios' memo, when he talks about the section that Trustee Wilson was just referring to, 232-05, he stated that this section is designed to address those few occasions where we could find ourselves being asked to provide services with no agreement in place. And when you go to section 232.05 itself, as part of the proposed ordinance changes, the paragraph 1, it says the Division of Fire is not authorized, insured, or empowered to respond beyond the corporate limits except for the agreements. And that's where I'm concerned, is that we never get it, put you guys in a situation where you're not insured, doing something that's not maybe outside of what the agreements that we already had.
And those few areas that you're talking about are areas that are so rural that don't even fall under basically townships. So they're not even falling under Mavis box alarm agreements.
Such as green
But
gardens.
this says you wouldn't be
those
insured.
are all covered
Green
under
gardens.
those.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know of any of those, to be honest with you.
Right.
It would be something that we could legally try to figure out how we can cover ourselves in operating
Right.
that way.
So, maybe that just needs to be taken out or whatever, but I wouldn't want them doing something to try to help somebody and then find out there's a problem and then, because of this, they're not insured.
Because we can find ourselves
Right.
going as far as New Orleans
Right.
and start Chicago on a regular basis.
Okay, so that's an item.
Katrina, we have dispatched people from here all the way down to Katrina.
This is an action item here. Attorney, and he wants to look at is that a question?
Madam Mayor, I just had a question along that same
Wait
line.
just a second.
Paragraph 1.
Paragraph 1. You understand? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, trustee Oscar.
Yeah, I had a question along the same lines in the same subject area. And mine is more of 2309. In that section only deals with ambulance services. It doesn't talk about fire suppression. What would happen if a fire happened in an unincorporated area that might be next to University Park? How do you charge a person?
What was nice is we had made changes to this building ordinance probably a year or two ago, and what there is there's a state statute that applies to fire protection districts that sets a standard of what their buildings can be. So what we did is we matched that, and then this way it gives us, again, reflection of just the state statute. So the billing dollar amounts
Could be handled by state statute.
That's right.
And you just need to add it to this section.
That could be added, actually, that could be added to this section. What we did was is we wanted to make this a multiple tier instead of throwing so much at you guys. We probably visit probably 7 through 10 or all the way through at a later date. We just wanted to get the first couple series out of the way, and then there'd be another set of changes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, under section. Under section, I know, I gotta talk so much. Under section 232-01A, where you amend the position of fire chief.
Correct.
Looking at this, it's comparing it to what the old ordinance was, and then I'd also be asking, in practice, how it actually operates. As proposed under this ordinance, the fire chief would be appointed by the village manager. Currently, the way this reads, the fire chief was appointed by the board of trustees. That would be an amendment if that's in practice. If prior to this, the board of trustees actually appointed the fire chief as compared to the village manager appointing, that would be one thing that the board should be made aware of if that's going to amend how this actually operates. The second would be within that same paragraph, it states that any person being appointed to the rank of fire chief should meet minimum qualifications set forth under the statutes. No problem, obviously. Then it says, and be selected from among full-time members of the Division of Fire. And I believe that would be also a new amendment, whereas if this were to pass, then the person who would become the fire chief would have to come from the ranks as compared to being able to have someone from outside.
And the reason why we did that is the current DC position, according to the old ordinance, is to come from within the fire department. So what I said earlier, what we tried to do is to match these. We wanted to get these as much as possibly the same, all the way straight through, from its requirements to their rights as they can be chosen. What we want to do is promote within the department that a person who's coming as a fireman knows that there's a future here. You can spend your 20 years as a fireman, but if you want and you have the ability and the drive to go through and become a lieutenant, become a deputy chief, and then ultimately have the opportunity to become a fire chief. We have guys that want to come in the door, I want them to stay, and when they're here, I want them to strive to be as high as they possibly can. Not just say, okay, I'm a fireman, maybe I can become a lieutenant and then I'm done. That's not what I want. I want people to keep going. That was the goal we tried to do with this. And we want to keep it standardized for both positions. Not only the requirements, but the rights that those people have. And that's why